Ron!
Ron?
We have to shoot the show!
It's the Smiths.
Hey, welcome to another episode of iFanboy, the comic book discussion show based on the website iFanboy.com. I'm Ron, and I'm here with...
I'm Josh.
I'm Connor.
And this week, we thought we would take a look at music in comics. Music in comics have always...
I love music.
You do.
I'm on drugs.
I found it really interesting that that I'm a big music fan, just to get that out of the way, as Josh is.
I'm not on drugs.
I mean, everybody pretty much likes music to some degree, but I'm a bit of a
That's
music fan.
no, I like all types of music.
Yeah.
I hate that sentence. Shut up, you do not.
But what I think is really interesting is that comics and music have always been kind of like somewhat of an underground kind of thing, and they've always kind of had some light ties to each other. Like, you know, Janis Joplin, Big Brother and Holding Company had R. Crumb doing record covers in the 60s.
I didn't know where you were going. I was like, what's he going to say?
Yeah, no. So, and, you know, the Grateful Dead have always had, you know, kind of comimic kind of art.
Yeah,
you know,
refuse
art.
to discuss them.
Well... There's no accounting for taste. That's going to be a lot of emails about that one. Anyway, so so I thought it was really interesting to see how music is present in comics of today.
It's interesting because, like, if you think about it, the one can have nothing to do with the other, really, in a physical sense.
Yeah.
Music is completely oral. There's nothing to see.
Right.
But there's very underground, like comics can be.
Right.
Music can be very underground, comics can be underground.
But music is something you hear, and there's no way to hear anything when reading a comic book. You have to physically put them together somehow, or...
Yeah, but it's also really interesting because they're both very artistic kind of expressions, and depending on the kind of music, stuff like that, they're both kind of telling stories to a certain degree, because it depends on how much you take of lyrics and things like that, but, you know, songs are basically 2-3 minute stories, and comics are 22-page stories, so, you know, they're kind of the same, but you're right. I mean, it was kind of one of those things where I was sitting down reading a comic, and I was like, you know, music and comics are linked, and then I went through my library. It's like this one and this one and this one, and so we're like, hey, let's do a show about it. So to kind of tie into what you were saying, Josh, there are a lot of comics that tend to take music, and not so much as music is present in the comic, but more to set the tone.
Yeah.
Almost as to set the soundtrack, which is a neat kind of thing, which I wish people would do more of, because it helps me, because when I know what the songs are, I could go put them on and listen to them.
But that only works if you get along with the person writing the book.
Exactly.
Because the thing is, if you were to read... We're going to talk about a couple of books that put their soundtrack in, and they're granted... Ron, they're both in Ron's wheelhouse, I'd say, musically. But the thing is, you know, when you watch the last Spider-Man movie and it's a whole Nickelback soundtrack, you're not so into that. So you don't really want to read an X-Men thing and have it be like, and here's Stained. You don't want that.
Yeah, personally.
We're going to have to show some of our musical tastes here, unfortunately.
Exactly, and that also ties into comic tastes as well.
Right.
Is that not every comic is for everybody, not every band is for everybody, and everybody has different kind of tastes. And what's interesting is to see is if you're able to get around the music to enjoy the comic, and vice versa, which can be a challenge for some people or whatever. I know Connor is very stoic in his music tastes.
I listen to the most music of all you
You
guys.
do, actually.
Genre-wise.
I was being ironic. Yeah. But anyway, so the first comic I want to talk about is called Blue Monday, which is by China Clugston and was published by Oni Press, and it's been... she published a lot of them in the early 2000s. It's kind of quieted down since she's put them out. But China's always had a strong tie in her work between music and the comic itself. The comic we talk about is Blue Monday, which is named after a New Order song. So there's their first kind of tie.
Now, who is New Order?
Well, New Order. Okay. New Order was Joy Division.
I know.
And then the singer killed himself.
No.
I know. Well, we're using it as a device.
This show's going to be 2 hours long. I'm just warning you all
And
now.
then Tony Wilson said...
So Joy Division, singer kills himself, they form New Order, they write a song Blue Monday, China Clugston writes a comic, named it, and what it is it's a comic about teens. It's set in a high school, I believe in California, kids with a very mod kind of sense of fashion. There's a lot of the red, white, and blue, kind of the jam pins, and one kid's got great sideburns, and Victor, I believe, he's got great hair, and it's about this group of friends and their relationships and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of fun,
because when you're kids like that, I mean, what happens is you link up with people who you can relate to.
Music becomes identity.
Music, and in that, it's exactly what it is. We are all into British bands of the 60s and 70s, and
exactly,
or
like new wave and stuff like that. And what China does is really interesting, is that in the gutters of the pages and stuff like that, sometimes she'll just put in the name of the song in the band. And I don't know if that's what she was listening to when she was drawing it. I own a piece of art on her and of hers, and in the gutter of the art is a name of a band and a song. I gotta check to see if it actually made it into print or not. But so I don't know if she just jots down what she was listening to when she was drawing it.
It almost seemed like it.
Yeah, it does.
But see, I tend to think of it more like this is what if this was a movie. If you were watching this right now.
Which could be both. It could be that.
Or it's that, and now there's two ways that could be. That could be the background music the characters are not aware of it, or that's on a radio that the characters are listening to at that exact time, or it's on one of their headphones.
I definitely found there's a connection between setting the mood of the page and what song she puts. You know what I mean? Because sometimes there'll be like kind of an energetic one, and there's like kind of a poppy hit from the new wave. From
I think
the
it's
80s,
tricky though, because you narrow your audience a little bit.
Yeah.
Because if you're not and a lot of the music is unfortunately, the large American audience, for example, is not going to be familiar with a lot of the music, at least not intimately. So what you're doing is you're shoving yourself into a niche that you may not have been before. So for the people like you who really know the music, you're making them enjoy it more, but you're kind of cutting other people out of it.
And then also that could be a gateway opening for someone.
I don't know most of the music in the gutters, and it didn't bother me one bit reading the book.
Right.
I just go past it. I just know in the beginning I'm not going to know that, so it's not important.
Right. So
well, that's they're one of the people who use music as identity.
Yeah.
Like you relate to your music. I'm not having to do with that. Just because.
Right. Exactly. It could turn some people off. It could open some people up to new music. But for others, a friend of ours, it's completely spot on.
Yeah.
Like if that's if you're into 80s new wave, Britpop, all that kind of stuff, and you look at these characters and they dress the way you dress, this is like the comic made for you.
Yeah.
So Blue Monday, it's one of my personal favorites. I wish she would do more of it. But who knows? Anyway.
If you thought iFanboy was only about comics and discussing those comics, you were wrong. Because there's also the iFanboys. That's the band made up of iFanboys. Okay, there's not really a band. I made that part up. But if there were a band, we'd have a website. And we'd get that website through GoDaddy.com. Because if I go to GoDaddy.com and I enter the coupon code iFanboy, I get 10% off my entire purchase. That's a great way to start a band.
But another comic that uses, not as aggressively as China, but uses to kind of soundtrack is Local by Brian Wood and Ryan Kelly. And that's also published by Oni. And while music isn't baked into the pages themselves, at the end of every issue, both Brian and Ryan write up kind of their thoughts during that issue, and they provide a playlist. And whether that playlist is meant to be the soundtrack for that issue or what they were listening to when they wrote it or drew it or whatever, I found that's one of the first things I jump to after I read the issues to see what kind of music they're kind of recommending. And music has kind of seeped its way a little bit into each issue every now and then, like there might be a band or something going on in the background, but you get this feeling of that it's present, and Local is a one and done kind of, but with an ongoing story, but a story about each city's in America, and this one girl's travels through the country as she grows up, and it's really, really good. It comes out infrequently, but it's worth it. And I think they're on like issue 11 or 12 now, and so there should be a trade forthcoming soon. So, so Local, Blue Monday are really good examples of comics that set the tone by the soundtrack.
And it's a way for the creators to actually connect with their audience in another way, which actually breaks that sort of the fourth wall where the creators this is what's in my head when you're doing it, and we can all sort of come together with the story.
Right. But now there tends to be sometimes comics that use music as a plot device, as music is present within the story and the storytelling and the characters and stuff like that. One example is one of our favorite books, Scott Pilgrim, the Scott Pilgrim series by Brian Lee O'Malley, published by Oni as well. Oni seems to be right into the music kind of.
I think that the editorial staff of Oni is particularly into
they have
that
good taste in
scene.
music. Yeah, but so Scott Pilgrim is like I said, written and drawn by Brian Lee O'Malley, who's from Toronto, up in Canada. And I read.
Where is Canada?
Recently read an interview with O'Malley where he's saying that music is a big part of his. You done?
It's a long time ago.
It was like a year ago. Music is a big part of his life, and he said music kind of works its way in everything that he does. And in the case of Scott Pilgrim, the main character, Scott Pilgrim, is in a band. And so throughout the story, they're now the fourth volume recently came out, so there are 4 volumes, and it's these little kind of manga kind of sizes. But throughout
digest size,
size that works, yeah. But throughout the book, some of the stories revolve around his band playing, his band practicing.
It becomes less prevalent as it
does.
It's not about him being in the band. The band is like one of the things he does. Whereas
By the fourth volume, it's almost not even in the book.
Well, because
it's-
they're recording. Yeah.
yeah, but that's the joke.
Yeah.
And like the Stephen Stills, I
Right.
don't know.
But I mean, in the first couple, they're in gigs. It's important that they're in the band. But the fourth
Right.
book, it's almost like it's not
But
relevant.
it's not the drive. The book is not about him
No.
and his band succeeding, which
Yeah.
is
It's a love
interesting.
story more.
Yeah.
Which is what like you think the first I'm doing a book about a guy in a band, you think the
Right.
book would be about the band,
Right.
And like that journey and everything,
Right.
but that's not what it's.
It's almost like his job. He goes to his day job sometimes.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah. And
It's his scene.
but I got to give him credit. The band has possibly the best band name ever. I can't even pronounce it correctly.
Sex Bomb.
Sex Bomb or Sex Bomb. Fantastic. When you see it written, every time I see it in the book, I laugh.
Yeah,
It's funny too because he's the bass player,
Yeah.
which is like it really tells you because a lot of times your main character is going to be your singer or your guitar player, and he's the bass player.
Yep.
So it's kind of it shows that he's not really he's in the band sure because it's a thing to do, it's a place to be, but
Exactly.
He's not writing the music. He's not. Yeah.
But I think it's an interesting contrast compared to a book, this book, Garageband,
Right.
which first second published.
This is an Italian book from Italy. It's been translated.
It's about an Italian garage band.
Yep, it's a bunch of kids, and at first you're relating, and you're like, "This is great." It's about some kids, and they're in a band, and they find a practice space, and they get together, and the music is important to them. And then it turns out one of the kids is a Nazi.
It gets really serious.
Not really. Just
No?
like an aspect of one of the and they all kind of play it off. They're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, he's just a thing he's into."
That's like his
it's a
crazy,
teenage-
like his crazy thing.
Yeah.
It's like a phase.
Like, oh, he's his Nazi thing.
But it's about how these kids who seem ostensibly poor and sort of nothing going on, nothing to do, which is every music
Bad. They're always struggling.
Yeah. But like the one kid's the bad kid that none of the parents trust, and it's just about how they feel really good about each other, and they feel when they play in this garage in this space, and it's actually very simple, but it's really beautifully and elegantly done. If you've ever had an experience being in a band, or like you're interested in that kind of thing with early roots, it's
My one caveat would be if you're not into European style art, you probably won't like it.
Yep.
It's very Europeanly drawn. The faces are very angular. The noses
Yep.
are long. It's not at all. It doesn't look like an American comic in the least.
Yeah, no, but it's an interesting because rock and roll and this stuff, this is a uniquely an American thing, and then it sort of got.
It's interesting to see that, and it's almost weird to see it in a European setting.
It is
It's a different point of view.
You
Yeah.
think of, I mean, obviously, rock and roll is not American.
Well, it started that way, and then
Right,
the
but I mean,
British
it's-
changed it. And now, since then, it's become everywhere. But now, like,
It's just
these-
weird to see it in like Italy. You don't think of Italian rock and roll bands. Clearly there are,
Right,
but you just
yeah.
I don't think of them. So it was weird to see that.
Yeah. So,
Also, don't read it in public if you don't want the full page Hitler
Yeah.
spread. If you're on the subway tunnels, Hitler. I don't know what that is. I'm gonna.
But it's interesting to see Scott Pilgrim is very lighthearted, whereas Garageband is not.
It's more realistic.
It's more realistic. Yeah, I wouldn't say
it's
it's
also
heavy-handed.
it's
but-
also
not funny.
Yeah.
It's very dark at points.
Yeah.
So, but then conversely, back on the other side of the spectrum, there's a book that Oni Press also publishes called "Love the Way You Love," where it's a romance book, or I don't want to say romantic comedy, but a romantic book. But
So almost in the Scott Pilgrim vein.
it's in the Scott Pilgrim vein, except that the main character, the band is his life. The band
Right.
is much more present in his life. There's a guy in a band,
he's
he's a
the
singer.
genius.
Yeah, he's the songwriting genius. You get the sense that they're going to be on to bigger and better things. And they're talking to a label A&R rep, and then the singer falls in love with the A&R rep's girlfriend. Dun dun dun. And what you get is then you get the whole love triangle, and then she dumps the A&R rep and goes with the singer, and then the A&R rep gets mad and says he's going to crush the band, and it becomes this whole kind of power struggle within this local music scene. And I don't know, it was fun to read. I mean,
Yeah.
again, it was kind of closer to my wheelhouse in terms of music and the kind of thing, a bit more of a Britpop presence, which is
all
one
of
of my
these
favorite
bands
songs.
seem to be the same. Where's the
Yeah.
hip hop book, Ron?
I know, exactly. Well, that's
What,
why.
you have an answer?
Well, no, I don't have a hip hop book.
Oh.
But when I saw that Oni also put it, I didn't realize this is like the Oni Fresh show. We're gonna get away from them in a bit, though. But Black Metal by Rick Spears and Chuck Beebe,
Some more white people.
essentially. But I
really
thought,
white.
Yeah.
I thought it was really funny because in this book, Black Metal is the book, is the story. It's way less realistic. It's way kind of fantastical.
Well, they're reincarnated gods.
Yeah, pretty much. You've got these two twins who are severed into two beings, but they're actually a reincarnated god who can fight the demons, and they use black metal as their power.
This is Scott Pilgrim meets South Park.
Yeah, you think?
I think a lot.
Yeah.
It's because they're they're little evil kids, and everybody thinks that like the fact that they're evil isn't bad. It's cool.
Yeah.
And it's like they're kind of wacky and out of control, and, it turns out they're demons.
Well, what was funny is that I like the fact that they're in their early teens, so they're not like full teen angst. They're still
they're
young.
like freshmen in high school.
Yeah,
14, 13, 15.
And what I liked was that in the beginning at least they're just at school and they're in this normal kind of setting and they're just like metal and nobody understands us metal, and then it just takes this kind of left turn. Similar to how Scott Pilgrim, if you're familiar with Scott Pilgrim, takes a left turn towards video games and kind of, takes a left turn to like demons and stuff. But the thing is,
like the imagery of like hardcore metal.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Well, black metal. I mean, that's the thing.
Here's an analogy. If you're an American, you'll understand. This is like a Saturday Night Live skit, which is really funny for half of it, and then by the second half, you're like, this should have ended a while ago.
You see,
like it was really funny, and then it went on way too long. And I see it's a series.
Yeah.
And there's more. I enjoyed this one. I don't want to read any more of it because the joke's been done.
And that's what's funny because I would imagine of your musical genres, I don't. How often do you listen to metal and black metal and stuff like that?
Not very.
I have listened to that stuff and I do enjoy some of it. It cracked me up throughout the whole book. And it's the kind of thing where, like, I know at least like 20 kids who I could give this to, and they would just love it because they'll eat it up because it speaks to them, similar in the way that Blue Monday speaks to somebody in that regard. So I think your Saturday Night Live mention is acute and accurate.
It just was the same joke over and over and over.
I kind of had the opposite effect. Because at first I was just annoyed by it. I thought it was cutesy or trying. I don't know. I guess I didn't think it was very funny, but a little bit at the end, I was like, well, there's a plot here.
Yeah.
But it took them a while to get to the plot. I feel like.
See, it lost me when the plot came in. I just thought they were funny in the beginning with them hitting guys with trays.
Well, so if you like metal, if you do this a lot, then it might be up your alley.
If you like metal, ironically, I think it's probably
exactly.
For you.
So I've been thinking more about this band thing. I think we'd make a movie. You know, like Talking Heads. I get like that. It's not a fat suit, it's just a wide suit, like it goes out wide, you know, that David Byrne wears. And get your movie from Netflix, and I, do that little dancey thing. Yeah. If you go to netflix.com/iFanboy, which will be the band name, you get a 2-week free trial. That's pretty sweet. You can rent the movie when the band actually forms. It'll be good.
Lastly, I just want to talk about a couple of books that Image Comics put out in the past couple of years that focused on music kind of as more.
Does somebody know about this?
I don't know. Focused more as kind of music as subject matter. The first one I mentioned is the more recent one called Phonogram, which was written by Kieran Gillen and drawn by Jamie McKelvey, who's currently writing and publishing Suburban Glamour, which we all love. But this is a black and white. It's out in trade paperback right now, and it's kind of a.
Yeah, you explain it.
It's a little bit. It's got a whole lot of the magic with a K, magic. The kind of
as opposed to the CK, which is Marvel trademark.
The kind of magic and sorcery, but using music as the tentpole of that magic. Specifically Britpop of the mid '90s,
which is where his magic power comes from.
Yeah,
he gets his power from the power of Oasis and Blur and other bands that I don't know as well.
From there, I don't want to spoil the story for you, and I'll let you figure it out.
Please do.
but
I read it. Could you spoil it for me?
I'll be honest. It took some. I'm not a big fan of the magic and the witches and stuff like that. So it took a little. It was hard for me to
literally, it took like the one thing you love and the one thing you hate, and it made you force them together.
Exactly together.
And the power of McKelvey's art.
Yeah, exactly. Ultimately, I thoroughly love it, and mainly because of the art and because of the music stuff, the little wizards and stuff like that, I could have done without.
I think the beginning was really good. The ending is good, and it was the middle where I just was like.
But it's going to be an ongoing kind of series, and I imagine they'll kind of get their legs under it, or whatever. Yeah. But what I mean, of the music I listen to, a large chunk of it is Britpop, and what I loved was this.
I would have never known that by watching the show.
The creative use of the covers, like this cover is a homage to Suede's first record.
A dude's kissing himself.
Yep. And each cover was a homage to a different record cover from the 90s from that period. In the back, there's extensive kind of notes and playlists.
And if you go back to the first Blue Monday and Local, he puts his playlist from when he was writing the book in the back.
The other thing I like, though, is that, and you don't get the references. I'm not sure if you'd be into it, but
he has a
explains all
glossary.
the references.
Yeah.
So, like, if he mentions a band, he explains who the band was and why they were relevant, and some of his own personal opinions that I could take or leave, about those bands. So it's if you wanted to know more.
It's actually a very extensive.
It's put a lot of work into it.
Belle and Sebastian.
Finally, speaking of Belle and Sebastian, last book I want to mention, which I don't think has gotten a lot of mention in the comics press, at least I didn't see.
There's a reason.
Well, is a book called "Put the Book Back on the Shelf," which is an anthology of indie artists, comic creators, interpreting and doing comics based on the music of Belle and Sebastian. Belle and Sebastian is kind of like they're a Scottish indie rock band. And they've been around since the late 90s, and a lot of their songs lend themselves to kind of storytelling. The kind of lyrics are very storytelling, that kind of thing. So what Image did was they got a bunch of different creators like Rick Spears of black metal, and
Jamie S. Rich from Love the Way You Love Me.
Yeah, and Andy Watson did one. Rick Remender, yeah. And they each took a song and did a comic based on that song. Now, some of them were the words in the comic were specifically the lyrics, and that's it. And they were just kind of visualizations of the songs. Some of them were inspired by the songs, so they wrote a story based off the song. Some of them were done really creatively where the song is playing in the background. Some of them where they pulled in some of the lyrics into the story but kind of elaborated on it. It's an anthology, so it's a lot of varying different styles and different kind of stories. No one I thought was alike. I mean, this was truly an anthology, and that was a huge cross-section.
They basically were like, here's a song, do whatever, interpret this however you want.
Yeah.
And it's an anthology, the quality of each one's going to be wildly
it's going to vary.
Well, you're going to like some and not like others, probably.
So ultimately, if you're a fan of Belle and Sebastian, you need to own this book.
If you don't like poetic anthologies, you should probably put the book back on the shelf.
If you're into indie artists, the kind of indie comic scene and like different kind of styles, if you like the Flight anthology, if you like anthologies, some sort of thing, you might enjoy this, and not know anything about Belle and Sebastian. But as me, I like Belle and Sebastian. I love them. When I got this,
the good thing about the anthology is you can leaf through it and go, nope, not reading that one. Nope, all right, I'll read that one. Oh, there's a flying bunny. Nope, not reading that one. And so you can just pick out the ones you want to read.
Exactly, and it's interesting
He's okay
though.
with this, but not okay with Sandman. I'm sorry. Look at it. Look at her eye makeup on the cover. But Belle and Sebastian.
But it's interesting because what I just thought as a Belle and Sebastian fan was the creative expression of the songs. I thought that each time with each story. Admittedly, I didn't like 100% of them. Some of them I was like,
No,
but some
I was like,
oh wow,
project.
that's a different take on it. Oh wow, that's a different take.
I'd love to see this done with. Actually, it'd be cool to do a series of these with different artists, different genres of music.
Yeah.
I'd perhaps be interested in something like this if I was familiar with the music.
That's what I mean. If you had like a book of a band you really liked, that might be more interesting to you. I think maybe if they did this as a series, that'd be kind of cool.
I had a real hard time with this one, but I could see. I mean, like the idea I respect is good, and getting all those people together, they clearly put effort into it.
Right.
It just didn't connect with me.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know what else? If we're a band, we're gonna have T-shirts. Cause what good band doesn't have T-shirts? And I'm in a band because I'm wearing the T-shirt over a collared shirt. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I got the T-shirt from jinx.com/iFanboy. So check it out. Check out the band when we drop our single. Is that what it's called? Drop a something. I don't know. We'll do it.
Whenever I read comics, I usually listen to music when I read them. So music and comics for me going together. So it was cool to see some comics that actually bring music into the subject and into the content itself. So I'm sure there are other comics we forgot. We focused mainly on the past few years. I'm sure there's some stuff from years ago that we totally should have been talking about.
So there was this mountain comic about Mississippi Queen and playing Guitar Hero.
Yeah, nice. So if you have any suggestions for us that we didn't talk about or tell us something to check out, you can email us at contact@ifanboy.com.
And if there's a comic that you know about some other type of music other than whiny British white kids, you can leave us a voicemail at 888-FANBOYS, which is 326-2697.
And go to ifanboy.com. There'll be a discussion about this show. We'll talk about all these books. You can also pick them up there, and then you can write about the ones we didn't talk about. And you can go to revision3.com/ifanboy. There's forums there. You can do the same thing. Just bitch and moan about what we didn't choose, because it's music and no one bitches and moans about music.
Music and comics are probably two of the most debated topics of there, because everybody believes what they listen to is right. And
you won't talk about music.
We very rarely does.
Because people get pissed off about music.
Yeah.
I just don't care.
Ron doesn't like the Rolling Stones.
Fuck them. Awful.
seconds. 3, 2.
Hey, welcome to another episode of iFanboy, the comic book discussion site show.